India will become the largest population in the world before the decade is out.
What is the relationship between the People's Republic of China and its great rivals, the United States and India? Well, in this clip from an exclusive client webinar, CRA analyst Nicholas Babaya explains the geopolitical tensions between these three nations.
If you were to describe a brief history of US-China relations, this can largely begin in the 1970s with Richard Nixon and Henry Kissinger's visit to China. This was just following the Sino-Soviet split. And there was this view that if they pursued a policy of détente with China, a policy of opening up, being a little bit more friendly, despite their socialist inclination, that the Chinese would liberalize, they would create a market economy, and that this would naturally lead them to become a liberal democracy like the United States. The problem is that China, because it welcomed a market economy, unlike the Soviet Union, it grew rapidly in the 1990s and the 2000s, and it became an incredible force to be reckoned with. However, in the 2010s, the US realized that it still hadn't liberalized, it still hadn't democratized, and it was actually beginning to become a real threat to their hegemony on the world. And this is where we see the pushback begin, much of it initiated under Donald Trump. And so this is what's the recent situation between US-China relations. This is Donald Trump speaking at the United Nations, and it should be noted that under his reign, he was the first US president in a long time to actually exercise some good, effective leverage over China. The sanctions and the trade war that he enacted really did hurt China, and China's GDP growth over time has been stunted, certainly as a result of the trade war. There are other factors which we will go into just now. The problem with this, however, is that China gains a lot of its political legitimacy from multilateral international organizations. And the US's modus operandi a lot of the time under Trump was to simply pull out of these organizations that were giving China legitimacy, places like the World Health Organization and other trading blocs. China was more than happy to simply take up the slack that the US had left. And unfortunately, their influence on the world has increased in other ways. And it is yet to be seen what the Biden administration will do, but this is the question you should keep in their head.
If you're enjoying this content, click here for a 30-day free trial of the Center for Risk Analysis to access exclusive client webinars and reports.
Will this new Cold War continue? Will the economies of China and the United States continue to be intertwined? Remember, the difference between this Cold War and the one of the Soviet Union is that China has embraced a market economy. And that means if one country does something to the other, there will be a backlash to the first country that enacted the sanctions. So it's fundamentally different in that regard. For the short to medium term, we flag the South China Sea as a region where there could be potential flare-ups. We'll show you a map just now of why that is. But know that there are many United States allies in that island chain, and this poses a great national security threat to China. And will America take back its place in multilateral organizations? That's something which I'm going to be looking closely at for the Biden administration. For now, I'm very interested to see the results of the meeting between Blinken and Wang Yi. I'm not sure what's going to happen, but it certainly will start off the beginning of Biden's China policy. Then we move on to India. Now, I think not many people consider India as being a potential for being a world power, but this is quite interesting because they are actually very similar to China in many ways. First of all, they have an absolutely enormous land area. They're one of the largest countries in the world. They also have an enormous population, just like China. They're the second largest country in the world. And in fact, they will overtake China, as I'll show you just now. And like China, they were once a very poor country, but their economy has liberalized in the latter part of the 20th century, and they have since lifted many millions of people out of poverty. India, like China has had its sphere of influence in East Asia, Japan, Vietnam, the Korean Peninsula. India, likewise, has also had this, and this has largely been in South and Southeast Asia. So these are two countries that actually share a lot of similarities in many ways. However, China definitely has the upper hand at the moment. If you look at this graph over here, this is a graph of China and India's GDP per capita over time. And you can just see that red line of China rocketing up at an incredible pace. This is also very good for India. If South Africa was growing at this rate, we would become an immensely wealthy country over a 10-year period. But we just haven't reached that. And India, as you can see, still lags behind China quite significantly. It hasn't quite taken off as China had. And you can see instances of why this would be. The Indian farmers' protests show how difficult it is for the Modi government to modernize certain aspects of the Indian economy, whereas China, being an authoritarian state, can just do it by brute force, no matter what people think. So perhaps one of the inefficiency of democracies, you might say. But have a look at this graph right here now. This is the historical and projection of China and India's population. And what you can see here is that China's rate of growth is slowly decreasing over time, because China has one of the lowest birth rates of any developing country in the world. Part of this is due to the one child policy. They currently have a two-child policy. There are many reasons, and we could go into this, but the point to show here is that India will become the largest population in the world before the decade is out. And simply having that kind of a manpower means that I think India will perhaps, long-term into the future, become the country that could really challenge China's hegemony on the world. So keep an eye on India. Don't count them out. For the moment, as an area that we flag potential flare-ups and instability, the border between China and India on the Himalayan mountain range is full of border disputes, particularly this area of Jammu and Kashmir, and all along this blue dotted line known as the line of actual control. China claims this entire territory south of the line of actual control right here, just to give an example. And as the Chinese military becomes more powerful, China's going to want to exert these claims and actually try to take back some land. For China, its geographical claims are incredibly important for its national security. So it would never want to set a precedent of simply leaving them idle. I think this is an area which we might see a few more flare-ups in the years to come. So keep an eye here.
Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below. Do you think that Chinese power in the region is overstated? And will it be threatened by emerging powers such as India? Please like this video and subscribe to the channel, and also check out the link to our 30-day free trial where you can access even more CRA content.